You ever wonder what the exact moment is when a person's soul just snaps? It's not usually a big, cinematic explosion. It's quiet. It's the sound of a phone ringing in a dark room and nobody picking up. It's the sound of the person who promised to protect you more than life itself, choosing to let you rot because he's busy. I'm sitting on the edge of a bed in a studio apartment that smells like cheap bleach and regret. My hands are shaking. There's a medical discharge paper next to me. It's still crisp, the ink barely dry. It says I'm no longer carrying. It says the life that was supposed to be ours is gone. And the funniest part? Julian still doesn't even know I'm back. He doesn't know I escaped. He probably hasn't even realized I was gone for 3 weeks. To the world, Julian Vance is a titan. The CEO who never sleeps, the man with the Midas touch.
To me,
He was the man who looked at his watch while I told him I was pregnant and asked if we could schedule the celebration for next quarter. I remember the basement. That's where it starts. Not here in this clean room, but in the damp, freezing dark of that warehouse on the edge of the city. My wrists were raw from the zip ties. I could hear the rats moving in the corners. I had 1 bar of signal on a burner phone I'd managed to snatch from one of the guys when he tripped. 1 bar. 1 chance. I didn't call the police. God, I was so stupid. I called him. I hit his private line. The one he told me was for emergencies only. My heart was thumping against my ribs, so hard I thought it would crack a bone. Pick up, Julian. Please, just pick up. It rang. Once.
twice.
Then that smooth, clinical voice. Elara? I told you. I'm in the middle of the mergers and acquisitions meeting. This better be about the gala tonight. Julian, I whispered, my voice cracking. Julian, please. I've been taken. There are men. I'm in a basement somewhere near the docks. I don't know how much time. There was a silence on the other end. For a second, just one beautiful second, I thought I heard a hitch in his breath. But then, I heard the sound of a pen scratching on paper. Elara, stop it, he said. His voice was like ice. I know you're upset that I missed dinner last night. This damsel in distress routine? It's beneath you. It's manipulative. I have 200 board members waiting for me to sign a billion-dollar deal. I'll see you at home. Don't be late for the charity auction. Julian, I'm bleeding, I sobbed. The baby, they hit me. Julian, please. Enough, he snapped. I don't have time for your dramas today. Grow up.
Click.
The dial tone was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. It echoed in that dark basement like a gunshot. He hung up. He actually hung up. I looked at the phone until the screen went black, reflecting my own terrified, bruised face. That was the moment. That was when the Elara who loved him died. I didn't cry after that. I couldn't. Something inside me just turned to stone. I realized then that no one was coming. No prince, no CEO, no husband. Just me. Me, and the life flickering out inside of me. I spent the next 48 hours in a blur of pain and adrenaline. I didn't escape because I was strong. I escaped because I had nothing left to lose. I crawled through a ventilation shaft that tore the skin off my shoulders. I ran through the rain until my lungs burned like they were filled with acid. I ended up at a clinic, a small, nameless place. I told them I fell. I told them I was alone. By the time the sun came up, I was lighter. The doctor looked at me with so much pity, I wanted to scream. I'm sorry, she said. The trauma, the stress, there was nothing we could do. I just nodded. I felt empty, a hollowed-out shell of a woman.
And now?
Now I'm sitting here, staring at the front door of his penthouse. I have the key. I have my dignity. And I have a plan. He thinks I'm at home, pouting. He thinks I'm waiting for him to come back and pat me on the head with an expensive piece of jewelry to make up for his busy day. He has no idea that the woman he married didn't make it out of that basement. I hear his car pull into the private garage downstairs. The heavy thud of the door. The elevator whirring. My heart isn't racing anymore. It's steady, cold. The door opens. Julian walks in, looking impeccable in a $3,000 suit. He's looking at his phone, frowning. Elara? You weren't at the auction. Do you have any idea how bad that looks? The press was.
He stops.
He finally looks up. He sees the bruises. He sees the bandage on my arm. He sees the way I'm looking at him, like he's a stranger I've just met on a crowded bus. "What happened to you?" he asks, his voice finally showing a flicker of something.
Concern?
"No, it's just confusion." I stand up. I don't move toward him. I move toward the suitcase I've already packed. "I did what you told me to do, Julian," I say. My voice is so calm it scares me. "I grew up." I walk past him, the scent of his expensive cologne making my stomach turn. He reaches out to grab my arm, but I flinch away so fast he freezes. "Where are you going?" "Elara talked to me." "Who did this?" I stop at the door and look back at the man I spent 5 years trying to please. The man I almost died for. "You did, Julian. You did this." I walk out.
I don't look back.
I don't tell him about the baby.
Not yet.
I want him to feel the silence first. I want the silence to eat him alive, just like it almost did to me. But as I step into the night, I realize someone is following me. And it's not Julian. The rain in this city doesn't wash anything away. It just moves the dirt around. I walked 4 blocks before I realized I didn't have a destination. I just had a suitcase and a hole where my heart used to be. Julian didn't follow me. Of course he didn't. He's a man of protocol. He probably stood in the foyer of that glass palace for 5 minutes, checked his watch, and decided I'd be back by morning once I calmed down. He thinks my silence is a tantrum. He thinks my bruises are a plea for attention. He has no idea I'm already dead to him. I checked into a motel that didn't ask for an ID, the kind of place where the neon sign hums louder than the TV. I sat on the edge of the polyester bedspread and stared at my phone. It started vibrating.
Julian.
10 missed calls. Then a text. "Elara, this is ridiculous. If this is about the kidnapping prank you tried to pull earlier, it's not funny. I've called the security team to check the perimeter. Come home." A prank. He called the worst moment of my life a prank. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, dry and jagged. I didn't reply. I turned the phone off and pulled the battery out. I wanted to be invisible. I needed to be a ghost. Ghosts have memories. I closed my eyes and I was back in that basement. I could feel the cold concrete against my cheek. I could hear the voice of the man who took me, a man who knew my name, a man who knew Julian's schedule. "Your husband's a busy man, Elara," he'd mocked, blowing smoke into my face. "Let's see how much a $1 billion signature is worth compared to a wife." They hadn't just taken me for money. They took me because they knew Julian wouldn't look. They knew his blind spot was his own arrogance. And they were right. They let me go not because a ransom was paid, but because I became a liability. A bleeding, broken woman who wasn't worth the effort of a high-stakes standoff. I woke up the next morning with a fever. My body was grieving the child it no longer held. I looked at my reflection in the cracked motel mirror. I looked old. I looked like a stranger. "He's going to look for you now," I whispered to the mirror. "But not because he loves you. Because you're his property. And Julian Vance doesn't lose property." I spent the day withdrawing every cent I had in my personal savings, the small account my mother left me that Julian always laughed at. It wasn't much, but it was enough to disappear. I bought a wig, a pair of thick glasses, and a bus ticket to a town 3 states away. As I sat in the back of that bus, watching the skyline of the city fade, I saw a news crawl on a TV at a roadside diner. Vance Global CEO Julian Vance announces major expansion. Wife Elara Vance reportedly recovering from a minor illness at a private retreat. He was already covering it up. He wasn't searching, he was spinning. He was protecting the stock price. I leaned my head against the cold glass of the bus window. The pain in my abdomen flared up, a sharp reminder of what I'd lost. "Rest in peace, little one," I thought. "I'm going to make sure he feels every ounce of this coldness." The bus pulled away, and for the first time in years, I breathed. But as we hit the highway, I noticed a black SUV. It had been behind us for 50 miles. And it wasn't a taxi. 3 days. That's how long it took for the minor illness lie to fall apart. Back in the city, the silence in the penthouse must have been deafening. I can picture Julia now. He'd come home late, expecting me to be in bed, waiting to apologize. He'd find the closet half empty. He'd find the jewelry he bought me sitting on the vanity like cold, hard stones. He'd find the note I left under his pillow. It only had 4 words. "You hung up, Julian." I heard later from a contact, an old assistant of his who actually liked me, that Julian went through the penthouse like a hurricane. He didn't cry. He didn't break down. He went into crisis mode. He hired the best private investigators in the country. He put a bounty on any information regarding my location. But he still didn't get it. He thought I was hiding. He didn't realize I was transforming. I was in a small town called Oakhaven. I was working in a library, surrounded by the smell of old paper and quiet. I called myself Sarah. I wore oversized sweaters to hide the weight I was losing. I was trying to heal, but the shadows followed me. One afternoon, a man walked into the library. He didn't look like a local. He wore a suit that cost more than the building we were in. He didn't look at the books.
He looked at me.
"Mrs. Vance?" he asked. My heart stopped. My hand tightened around the book I was shelving. I didn't look up. "You have the wrong person. I'm Sarah." "Julian is worried," the man said. He wasn't a cop. He was an enforcer. One of Julian's fixers. "He's been going crazy, Elara. He hasn't slept in 72 hours. He's fired half his board.
He's obsessed.
He says you're having some kind of breakdown." I finally looked at him. I let him see the coldness in my eyes. "Is that what he calls it? A breakdown?" "He wants you home. He says whatever you want you can have. Money, houses, a new car. He just wants this embarrassment to end." I laughed. It was a sound that didn't belong in a library. Tell Julian that he had his chance to have me home. He had his chance when I was in that basement, begging for my life. Tell him I'm not his wife anymore. I'm his ghost. The man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threat. "He's coming here, Elara." He tracked the bus ticket. "He'll be here by sunset. You can't run from a man who owns the roads." I felt the walls closing in. The panic started to rise, but then I remembered the discharge papers. I remembered the feeling of the life leaving my body while Julian talked about mergers. The fear vanished. It was replaced by a white-hot rage. "Let him come," I said. "I have something to show him." I walked out of that library and went to the only place in town Julian wouldn't expect. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go to the police. I went to the local news station. If Julian wanted a public wife, I was going to give him one. But not the one he wanted. The sun was setting over Oakhaven, casting long, bloody shadows across the pavement. I was standing in the middle of the town square. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was wearing the same dress I'd escaped in, the one with the dried blood on the hem and the dirt from the warehouse floor. I saw the motorcade before I heard it. 3 black cars, moving like a funeral procession. They screeched to a halt in front of me. The door of the middle car opened. Julian stepped out. He looked terrible. His hair was a mess, his eyes were bloodshot, and his expensive suit was wrinkled. For the first time in his life, Julian Vance looked like he was losing control. He saw me, and for a split second, I saw relief in his eyes. He actually tried to smile. He walked toward me, arms open, as if he could just wrap me up and tuck me back into his perfect life. "Elara," he breathed.
Thank God.
"You have no idea what you've put me through. The press, the board, they're asking questions. But it's okay. I've got the private jet waiting at the airstrip. We'll go to the island. We'll fix this." I stood my ground. I didn't move an inch. "Fix what, Julian?" He stopped a few feet away, confused. The kidnapping thing. Whatever happened. I'll hire the best therapists. I'll make sure those men are caught. I'll buy the damn police department if I have to. "You still don't get it," I said, my voice echoing in the quiet square. "You think this is a problem you can throw money at. You think I'm here because I want an apology." "What do you want then?" he shouted, his frustration finally boiling over. "I've spent millions searching for you. I went crazy, Elara. I haven't eaten. I haven't slept. I went through hell to find you." I took a step forward, right into his face. I looked him dead in the eye. "You went through hell?" I whispered. "I was in hell, Julian. I was in a basement with a broken rib and a burner phone. I called you. I told you I was dying. I told you our baby was in danger. His face went pale. The baby word hit him like a physical blow. What? What are you talking about? The baby you didn't have time for, Julian. The one you told me to schedule for next quarter. I pulled a small, crumpled ultrasound photo from my pocket, the only thing I'd saved. I held it up. He's gone.
Or she.
I'll never know, because when I needed a husband, I got a CEO. Julian's hand reached out, trembling. Elara. I didn't. I thought you were just being dramatic. I didn't think. That's your problem, Julian. You never think about anyone but yourself. I looked past him. A news van from the city pulled up, cameras already rolling. I had called them an hour ago. You wanted to find me? I said, a cold smile touching my lips. Now the whole world is going to find out who you really are. I turned toward the cameras. Julian reached for me, his face twisted in a mask of pure terror. Elara, don't. Think about the company. Think about our reputation. I am thinking about it, I said, looking straight into the lens. I'm thinking about how much a reputation is worth when it's built on a grave. I took a deep breath. The red light on the camera flickered to life. My name is Elara Vance, I started. And I have a story to tell about the man the world calls a hero. Julian fell to his knees. The Titan had finally crumbled. But I wasn't finished with him. Not by a long shot. Have you ever seen a man's empire turn into a cage in real time? Standing in that town square, the camera lens felt like a confessional. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just told the truth. I told them about the warehouse. I told them about the zip ties. I told them about the phone call, the one where the visionary of the year told his kidnapped, pregnant wife to grow up because he had a merger to sign. I watched Julian's face through the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the camera. He was calculating. Even then, in the middle of his soul rotting, he was checking the angles. He tried to step into the frame, putting on that practiced, empathetic CEO face he uses for charity galas. My wife is clearly unwell, he said, his voice smooth as oil. The trauma of her recent ordeal has confused her. We're getting her medical help immediately. I didn't even flinch. I just pulled out my phone, the one I'd recovered from the motel. I had recorded the call.
I didn't tell him that.
I'd set my phone to auto-record months ago because I was tired of him gaslighting me about what he'd promised. I held the speaker up to the microphone. Elara, stop it. This damsel in distress routine? It's beneath you. I have 200 board members waiting. Enough. I don't have time for your dramas today. The silence that followed in that square was heavier than the basement. The camera crew froze. The fixers Julian brought with him looked at the ground. Julian, he just turned gray. Not pale.
Gray.
Like ash. That's the man you're investing in, I said to the lens. A man who thinks a human life is just drama if it interrupts his bottom line. The clip went viral before I even finished the sentence. Within 10 minutes, #VanceIsCold was trending. Within 20, the Vance global stock started a vertical drop that looked like a suicide jump. Julian's phone started exploding in his pocket. Notification after notification.
The board.
The investors.
The press.
He looked at the device like it was a live grenade. You've destroyed it, he whispered, looking at me with a mix of horror and genuine awe. Everything I built. 5 years of marriage, Elara. I gave you everything. The diamonds, the travel, the status. You gave me a golden cage, Julian, I snapped. And then you locked the door and walked away when the building caught fire. I didn't destroy your empire. You did. When you hung up that phone, you signed the papers for your own ruin. I walked away then, right past the news vans, right past his black SUVs. I didn't have a car, so I just started walking down the main street of Oakhaven. But I could feel the shift in the air. Julian wasn't a man who took no for an answer, and he certainly wasn't a man who let a billion-dollar asset walk away with his secrets.
He didn't follow me this time.
He got into his car and sped off in the opposite direction. But I knew him. He wasn't retreating. He was going to find a way to flip the script. And I knew exactly what his next move would be. He was going to go after the only thing I had left, my sanity. 2 days later, I was in a hotel in the city. I'd been subpoenaed. Not by the police, but by Julian's legal team. He had filed for an emergency conservatorship. His lawyers were everywhere. They leaked medical records, faked, of course, claiming I had a history of hysterical episodes and phantom pregnancies. They found a doctor willing to sign a paper saying the trauma of the kidnapping had caused a psychotic break. The narrative was shifting. The public loves a villain, but they love a tragic, broken woman even more. The headlines went from CEO ignores wife to IS Elara Vance staging a breakdown. I sat in that hotel room, watching the news, feeling the walls close in. Every time I ordered room service, the waiter looked at me with pity. Every time I walked into the lobby, people whispered. Julian sent me a message. A single, handwritten note delivered to my door. Come back to the penthouse. Retract the statement. Tell them it was a hallucination brought on by the stress. I'll make the legal problems go away. We can start over. We can even try for another baby. Don't force me to put you in a facility, Elara. I'm doing this for your own good. The arrogance of it. The sheer, unadulterated gall. He thought he could buy my silence with the very thing he'd helped kill. I looked at the note, and then I looked at the bottle of pills on the nightstand, sedatives his doctors had prescribed. I realized then that if I stayed in this hotel, I'd be found, in a state that proved his point. He wasn't just trying to win, he was trying to erase me. I called the only person I knew who hated Julian more than I did. His rival, Marcus Thorne. Marcus was the man Julian had stepped over to get to the top. A man who knew where the bodies were buried, literally. I have the ledger, I told Marcus when he picked up. What ledger, Elara? The one Julian keeps in the floor safe. The one that lists the consulting fees he paid to the men who kidnapped me. There was a long pause. He paid them? His own wife. He didn't pay them to kidnap me, I whispered, the realization finally hitting me with full force. He paid them to frighten me. It was supposed to be a scare tactic to keep me from asking for a divorce. But they got greedy. They took it too far. And when I called him, he couldn't help me because he knew if the police got involved, the money trail would lead back to his consultants. He hadn't just ignored me. He had orchestrated. Get to my office, Marcus said.
Now.
I grabbed my bag, but as I reached for the door handle, I heard the lock click from the outside. A heavy, muffled thud hit the door. Then another. Julian's voice came through the wood, low and terrifyingly calm. Open the door, Elara. The doctors are here. It's time to go home. The door groaned under the pressure. Julian wasn't alone. I could hear the heavy breathing of his security team. Elara, don't make this harder than it has to be, Julian called out. He sounded like a disappointed father. You're not well. Everyone knows it. Just let us help you. I looked at the window. 12 stories up. No fire escape. I looked at the bathroom. There was a small service hatch in the ceiling for the plumbing. I'm small. I'm thin. I moved faster than I ever have in my life. I dragged the vanity chair over, climbed up, and pushed the plastic panel aside. It was dark, cramped, and smelled like dust and damp metal. I pulled myself up just as I heard the hotel door splinter open. Find her. Julian's voice lost its calm.
It was a roar now.
Check the bedroom. Check the balcony. I crawled through the narrow crawl space, my knees scraping against the rough concrete. I could hear them below me. I could hear Julian's expensive shoes clicking on the marble floor of the bathroom. She's gone. How is she gone? I kept moving. I followed the faint light of a ventilation shaft. I didn't think about the height. I didn't think about the pain in my chest. I only thought about the ledger. I had lied to Marcus. I didn't have the physical book. I had something better. I had the digital keys to Julian's offshore accounts, which I'd swiped from his laptop months ago when I was bored and feeling neglected. I reached the end of the shaft and kicked out the grate. It fell into a service hallway on the 11th floor. I tumbled out, landing hard on my shoulder. I didn't stop. I ran for the service stairs. I burst out into the alleyway behind the hotel, gasping for air. The city was loud and different. I looked up and saw Julian standing on the balcony of my room, 12 floors up, looking down like a gargoyle. He saw me. Our eyes met for one final second. I didn't see love. I didn't even see hate. I saw a man looking at a glitch in his system. A man who couldn't understand why the asset was still moving. I raised my hand. I didn't give him the finger. I didn't wave. I just pointed at my phone. I hit send on the email I'd drafted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Every wire transfer, every consultant payment, every offshore shell company used to hide the hush money. Julian's face didn't change, but his body did. He slumped against the railing. He knew. I turned and vanished into the crowd of the city. For the first time since that basement, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward the end of Julian Vance. But as I reached the corner, a black car pulled up. Not Julian's. Not the FBI's. The door opened. "Get in," a voice said. It was the man from the basement. The one who had kidnapped me. "We need to talk about what Julian really did to that baby." I didn't scream. When you've already been to the bottom of the ocean, you don't fear a puddle. I looked at the man behind the wheel, the same man who had zip-tied my wrists in that warehouse. His name was Miller. He looked tired. Not like a monster, just like a guy who did dirty work for a paycheck that never quite felt big enough. "I sent the files, Miller," I said, my voice as cold as the AC blowing on my face. "The FBI is already decoding the offshore accounts. You're going down with him." Miller didn't look at me. He just pulled into traffic, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. "I know. That's why I'm here. Julian didn't just pay us to scare you, Elara. He paid us to ensure there was no complication to his succession plan." My blood turned to ice. "What does that mean?" "He has a morality clause in his grandfather's trust," Miller muttered, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "If he had a child out of wedlock, or if a child was born during a volatile marriage, the board could strip his voting rights. He didn't want a kid. Not with you.
Not now.
He told us to make sure the accident was thorough." The world tilted. I thought the miscarriage was the trauma. I thought it was the stress of the basement. I looked down at my stomach, feeling a phantom ache that suddenly felt like a crime scene. "He told you to kill my baby?" I whispered. The words felt like glass in my mouth. "He told us to handle the situation," Miller corrected, though the distinction was meaningless. "But here's the thing, Elara. I have a daughter." "I couldn't do it." "The doctor at that clinic? The one who told you it was over? She's my sister. We didn't end it. We staged it." I stopped breathing. The city noise outside the window vanished. There was only the sound of my own heart, hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "What are you saying?" Miller pulled the car over into a quiet side street. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a digital tablet. He swiped a few times and handed it to me. It was a live feed. A grainy, black and white nursery. And there, in a small wooden crib, was a tuft of dark hair. A tiny hand reached up, grasping at the air. "She's 6 months old now," Miller said softly. "My sister has been raising her in a safe house upstate. Julian thinks she's gone. He thinks he's free. I kept her as my insurance policy, but seeing you on that news broadcast, seeing you stand up to him, I realized insurance isn't enough. You need your daughter. And she needs a mother who isn't a ghost." I touched the screen. My finger brushed the image of that tiny, perfect hand. I didn't cry. The rage I'd felt before was a candle compared to the sun that was now exploding inside me. Julian didn't just ignore me. He tried to murder our future. And then he used my grief to try and lock me in an asylum. "Drive," I said. My voice wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to something much older, much more dangerous. "Where?" Miller asked. "To the Vance Global headquarters. It's the annual shareholder meeting. Julian is about to give his recovery speech. I want to be there for the Q&A." The lobby of Vance Global is a cathedral of glass and ego. Security tried to stop me, but I didn't even look at them. I had the ledger. I had the recording. And now I had the truth. "I'm Mrs. Vance," I said to the guard, my eyes burning through his. "Move, or be part of the lawsuit." He moved. I reached the grand ballroom just as the double doors were closing. Inside, "It has been a difficult year for my family," Julian was saying, his voice thick with fake emotion. "My wife's mental health has been a private struggle, one that we are navigating with the best medical care." I pushed the doors open. The boom echoed through the hall. 300 heads turned. The cameras, there to document his triumph, swung toward me. "The only thing Julian Vance is navigating," I said, my voice projected by the sheer force of my fury, "is a prison sentence." Julian froze. His mouth stayed open, a small, ugly hole in his perfect face. "Elara, security, please. She's having an episode." "I'm not the one having an episode, Julian," I said, walking down the center aisle. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the judge. I held up the tablet Miller had given me. I didn't show the baby, not yet. I showed the wire transfer logs. "This is the paper trail for the men who kidnapped me," I shouted. "Signed by Julian's private equity firm. This is the recording of him hanging up on me while I begged for my life." I reached the stage. I climbed the stairs. Julian backed away, his hands shaking. "But here is the real news," I said, turning to the audience. I looked at the board members, the men who valued profit over people. Julian Vance tried to pay to have his own unborn child removed from the equation. He failed. I turned a tablet around. I showed the live feed of the nursery. "She's alive, Julian," I whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch it. "And she's never going to know your name. But the world? The world is going to know everything." The room erupted. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a collapse. The board members stood up. The press swarmed the stage. Julian tried to run, but the FBI, the ones I'd emailed from the hotel, were already coming through the side doors. They didn't go for me. They went for him. As they clicked the handcuffs onto his wrists, Julian looked at me. For the first time, I saw real fear. Not fear of losing money. Fear of me. "I did it for us, Elara," he whimpered. "For the legacy." I leaned in, my breath hot against his ear. "You don't have a legacy, Julian. You just have a cell." It's been a year since that day in the ballroom. The Vance empire didn't just fall, it was dismantled. The assets were frozen, the board was replaced, and Julian is currently serving 20 years for conspiracy, kidnapping, and a list of financial crimes that would take me an hour to read. I didn't take his money. I didn't want the blood on it. I took what mattered. I'm sitting on a porch now, in a house that doesn't have a single piece of marble in it. The air smells like pine and the soil after a rain. There's a little girl in the grass. She has my eyes and her father's stubborn chin, but she'll never have his heart. Her name is Maya. It means illusion, a reminder that the life I thought I had was a lie, but the one I have now is the only truth that matters. I learned something in that basement. I learned that silence isn't just a lack of noise. Silence is a choice. When someone shows you who they are by staying silent during your darkest hour, believe them.
Don't wait for them to change.
Don't wait for them to realize your worth. Your worth isn't a stock price. It isn't a quarterly celebration. It's the breath in your lungs and the strength in your hands when you decide to save yourself. I used to think I was half of a whole. Now I know I'm a mountain. Julian went crazy searching for me because he lost his most prized possession. I went through hell to find myself because I realized I was the only person who was ever going to hold my hand. I'm not a CEO's wife anymore. I'm just Elara. And for the first time in my life, that is more than enough. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.